My name is Katelyn Halpern. I'm the owner and artistic director of SMUSH Gallery here in Jersey City. And tonight I'm so pleased to welcome everyone to our Artists Talk for an Artist's Duty, which is currently on view in the gallery and online. We opened this show last weekend and it will be on view through June 12th. And the whole show is also available online. And I'm going to be putting the link to that in the chat a little bit later on so that you can check out all the work if you haven't had a chance to see it in person. And I also wanted to mention, sometimes we do these extra kind of events that wrap around the visual art shows. So tonight we have our Artists Talk, and then on Saturday, June 5th, we're going to have some extended gallery hours. You can find the hours for that on our website. And then from 6 to 7, we're going to have a live music jam that people can attend either in the gallery or join by live stream. And if you do want to come in person, then we're going to ask you to RSVP for that. And I'll put links again to all that stuff in the chat. And that's kind of where we are for an artist's duty. Oh, and then just a programming note for tonight. Auto captions are enabled. And if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see an option to pop those up. If you're having trouble doing that, then you can drop a message in the chat and I can help you bring those up so that you can read along with everything that we're saying, or you can leave them off your screen, whatever you prefer there. And like I mentioned, we're also recording tonight and we're hoping to share this with some of our folks who were not able to join us in real time. So let's talk about these wonderful artists. An Artist's Duty contains the work of 3 artists, Stephanie Geremito, Grace Kim, and Sara Lauth. Stephanie also curated the show. And I just want to make an additional note that proceeds from the whole show, a portion of proceeds from all of the artwork sold will benefit the Climate Emergency Fund, and all proceeds from tonight's Artists Talk will benefit the Climate Emergency Fund. And so that is another link that you can look forward to seeing in the chat, is where to donate so that we can pitching in for the climate crisis that is upon us. On that cheerful note, I'd like to introduce our artists, share a little bit about them, and then I'll moderate a discussion. And as we go along, if any members of our audience have questions for the artists, you can either hold them and then speak them into the space a little bit later on, or you can drop them in the chat and I'll kind of filter them up as we go along. Yeah, but we would really love to hear from our audience as well. So while you start thinking about all of that, let me take just a moment, put some of these links here for you so that you maybe can flip through the show. Cool. Help us help the Climate Emergency Fund, all these different things. All right, the one that says check out, that's our donate link. And then of course, an Artist's Duty you see in the URL there. Okay, so let me tell you about these fantastic people. Stephanie Geremito is an artist and the curator of this show. As the co-founder of this operation, Stephanie uses color, texture, and mark to create an atmosphere for the viewer. She's previously worked with oil paint on large canvas, portraying figures and dreamlike moments and anomalies in nature. During her college years, Stephanie curated and directed her first art exhibition entitled Art is Dead, organizing her peers in a themed underground art and music festival held in Massapequa Park, New York. I hope I said that correctly. After graduating in 2008 with her BFA from Adelphi University in Garden City, New York, Stephanie used her time to focus on exploring new ways to express her vision and hone her process. She spent time as a curator at Imagine Gallery in Port Jefferson, New York. She continues to show her work in local cafes and restaurants. And in Stephanie's current series, she creates texture using water-based paint, ink, and acrylic paint pens, experimenting on smaller canvas or paper. Stephanie founded an Artist's Duty with her sister, Marissa, in an effort to show that in any generation, there will always be public figures using their status to create a positive message and productively reflect the times. The idea is to instill hope. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Next, I'd like to introduce Grace Kim. Grace Kim is an artist in our show. A product of the model minority myth, Grace still has trouble expressing herself in person, but paints her feelings and her truth through faces that may at first glance seem expressionless, but when stared at deeply, reveal a sense of longing and sadness. She works primarily in oil, but also loves watercolor. Her portrait paintings exemplify a strong compassion for the human struggle. She connects deeply with every face she paints and discovers an inner beauty and understanding with every stroke of the brush. Each painting has an emotional connection from artist to subject as the face slowly appears on the canvas. A graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design and the School of Visual Art, Grace has been immersed in art for over 20 years. She taught elementary school art for about a decade until she realized her true passion was to be a painter. Grace has shown her work in several galleries in California and is currently showing 3 of her paintings in a local gallery in her new hometown in Georgia. She's thrilled to be part of this exhibit because she strongly believes that it is indeed an artist's duty to reflect the times. She never planned on being a portrait painter, but she's drawn to the emotion and expression that is only revealed through the nuances found in a face. Artists have used their talents throughout history to comment on the social and political climate of their times. Just recently, Grace has been drawn to painting portraits that convey a sense of belonging, and she strives to be a voice in her Asian American community by expressing her beliefs and values through her art. We'll hear more from Grace a little later on. And our third artist for the show is Sara Lauth. Sara L. Lauth is an artist and art educator born and raised in New York. She currently resides in, this says New York City, and teaches elementary, I think we have an update. Maybe you'll give us the update in a little bit. And teaches elementary art for a charter network in Harlem. She graduated from Adelphi University with a BFA in fine arts and from the School of Visual Arts with an MAT in art education. Since 2004, Sara L. has created an eclectic and dynamic body of work focusing on the duality and abstruseness of the human experience. She aims to evoke both subtle and intense emotional responses to her work through the use of line, pattern, texture, color, and composition. Her artworks are as much examinations of the soul and an outlet for personal disharmony as they are explorations of the creative mediums at hand. The onset of 2020 has unleashed new challenges for all educators and creatives. In the wake of a global pandemic, society has been compelled into methods of remote and virtual communication. Sara L. has used this time to expand her creative process into the world of digital art, which is what she's brought to our show, An Artist's Duty. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. We've heard this phrase over and over now because it's the title of the show, An Artist's Duty. And what people may not necessarily know is that this is a part of a quote from Nina Simone, and it is the inspiration for the show. And I wonder if you could talk about the quote that inspired the show.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go. So it's funny because, like I said in the statement and everything, it was my sister and I were like standing in her kitchen and talking about this amazing interview that Nina Simone had, where she said, an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And what's cool about it is when you read the interview, like the interviewer like challenges her. She's like, I don't think an artist should be involved in those sorts of things. And she went right back at her and was like, no, this is absolutely our role, is to reflect the times in which we live. How can you not put across your surrounding circumstances? So we were talking about it, and that's actually, you know, it was so powerful to us that that's how the show came into play, because I have never in my past work spoken about the times. It's always been, you know, my own personal stuff. So it was really like inspiring to me to do the same thing, to reflect the times. So we came up with the concept, I think it was like early 2019, we were talking about it. So we've been working on it for a long time.
And I know that Stephanie, you know, as the curator, kind of pulled these thoughts together and all of that. Grace, Sara, is there anything that you want to throw in about this quote or anything related to the show's title? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, definitely. When Stephanie was describing, like, I get chills, and I so rarely get chills. So like, so this is a really powerful thing. I had been like just recently, I guess, with the wake of the digital art, have been making, and I turned my personal Instagram into an art Instagram. And I was like, I've been absent from 10 years while teaching, but I'm going to make a comeback now. I'm finally ready. And I guess, you know, Stephanie and I have collaborated before. We went to college together. We're friends. We've put on art shows together. But she called me one day and was like, would you be interested in like doing this thing with me? And she told me about it, kind of how she's talked about it now. And I was down for anything. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. She's like, you think you could make a whole body of work in like a year? And I was like, yeah, just like say yes. So yes. And very similar to what Stephanie had said, like looking back at my personal work, it was never really about the times, maybe slightly, maybe subtly, but if I was to reflect the times at all, I was much more like an advocate through like social media, maybe sharing articles or sharing like words or videos from other people, which I can talk more about later, is how I got this idea. And it's actually been a really interesting experience, like reflecting the times, and I definitely don't want to like stop here. So I think like moving forward, like how can I merge what I've always done with still reflecting the times? It's been like kind of like a new awakening for me.
Same.
Yeah, and
For sure.
Sarah asked me then, a month later, she's like, would you be interested in this show? And at the time I was like, oh my gosh, like someone wants to hear what I have to say. And it was kind of kismet, because I was trying to paint personal things while also trying to convey like some social commentary. Just because like in my mind, I always knew that artists, I'm sorry, that's my dog. She wants to talk to you. Juliet, come here. Okay. I always knew that the artists always have like this responsibility, or like they always said some kind of social commentary, whether it was accepted or not. And I always thought that was interesting. And so I was like, wow, it really fits where I'm trying to go as an artist, to express myself and also to be able to communicate with the world. And so I was like, let's do it. It was very exciting.
Yeah, that's kind of a lovely segue into the next thing that I wanted to ask all of you, which is about, the specific. So when you're talking about, reflecting the times and engaging with the things that are going on in the world, but through this lens of portraiture, at some point you have to decide who you're going to represent, right? And the range of artists and activists in this show is so broad. And I wonder if each of you could highlight someone or maybe a couple of people that you chose to represent. Maybe even somebody that we're not so familiar with, or maybe somebody whose activism isn't so familiar, to maybe pull us into your thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
But I really, go ahead.
No, you go. It's the Zoom live, Grace. Go ahead. I would love to hear from you.
My train of thought is all okay. I think Laverne Cox really, popped out for me. When I was thinking about the people that I wanted to paint, she was like one of the people that I was like, I don't know if I should, because I don't fully comprehend the LGBTQ community myself. I came from a very conservative family. I came from a family where I knew that if I painted something like this, it might be, viewed a little bit on the negative side. And so I hesitated, but then I was like, no, I need to push myself here. And while I was painting her, I started to understand, their humanity, and also the fact that what she's doing right now for the LGBTQ community is educating the world about the whole movement. And it was very touching for me personally as I was painting her. And also she's just a very beautiful woman. And I was like, I enjoyed painting her. And that was probably my biggest challenge, just because I don't know a lot about it, and I had to push myself to learn more about it. So I hope, that painting also reaches people in that way.
Grace, I just want to say, because I know I said this to you before, but like, I think it's so cool that you like growing up in like a confined, like, you said confined world, something like that when you talked about it. Conservative world. Okay, sorry. But like, where you didn't learn about things like that. Like, I think that's the most beautiful thing, that you want to explore like this stuff, and that you like, even with your family being the way they might be, this is like the open mind that you're approaching all this stuff with.
Absolutely.
I
And
respect
actually,
that so
my
much.
dad saw the painting, and I don't think he fully understood. He's like, I was like, oh, that's a woman named Laverne Cox. She represents the LGBTQ community. And he was just
Right.
kind of like, oh. But that was it. So it was
All you
it was
need to say.
it was very interesting. I was like, I don't think he fully understands, but okay, yeah, moving on.
Mhm. Actually, Grace, before, for anybody who may not be super familiar, can you give us just like a little bit more information about who Laverne Cox is? And then
yeah.
also, like, while I'm doing follow-up questions for you, you talked just now and also in your statement about the kind of like deepening relationship that you feel with people as you begin to paint their faces. Oh, look, we've got in the Zoom, my dad's got your work up. I think he's showing us your painting in the
Amazing.
Oh, thank you.
yeah, it's a very
Awesome.
beautiful piece.
Thank you.
So yeah, the two questions are, can you tell us a little bit more about Laverne Cox? And then also, can you talk more about this sensation or experience that you describe about coming to feel that intimacy as you work?
Oh, I'm sure I'll do the best that I can. So Laverne Cox, I first saw her in Orange is the New Black, which is like the Emmy-nominated, Emmy Award-winning show on Netflix about incarcerated women. And so I feel like that show in general just really opened my eyes to a lot of different type of people, a lot of different types of women out there that are always stereotyped as bad. They're stereotyped as, they deserve to be where they are because of the choices that they made. And it really dove deep into their humanity. And I think Laverne Cox, really, her character really stuck out to me. And it was just one of those things where, wow, I don't really know a lot about this. And I don't really fully understand where this is coming from. Even in the show, I was like, why is she in a women's prison? And so it was very interesting. So when I was painting her and when I decided to go with painting her, that's what I wanted to sort of figure out in my own heart. You know, these women are looking for belonging. They're looking for acceptance. And, you know, if we don't understand their humanity at all, you know, that's like the first step for me is like where, you know, that's if you don't accept that they are human, then, you know, who is ever allowed to make a mistake then? Who is ever allowed to, you know, make a choice on their own, you know? And I think that's where we're kind of heading towards right now is everybody's realizing that we have choices. What was the second question? I think I did everything right.
Yeah, no, that was great. And I just have a clarifying question because I have not seen Orange is the New Black. Does Laverne Cox play a Black trans woman in the show as well? Like, is her
Yes.
character trans?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I highly recommend the show. It's good.
I'll put it on my list. The second question that I asked was about how, like, your relationship with the faces, and yeah, how you get to know your subjects, even when you don't know them personally.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know what it is about it, but seeing each little detail come onto the canvas, it just creates a human. And I'm looking face to face at this person. And a lot of times I talk to myself while I paint, I sing while I paint, I dance while I paint, and I do all these things. And I'm like, I'm getting to know this person on like a really personal, intimate level. And I think no matter who I'm painting, it's just like, it reveals something about me through them. And so their characteristics and their identity is kind of like, I understand it better. I have more compassion for their story and their background.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Sarah, do you want to talk to us about somebody that you've highlighted?
Yeah, sure. I would actually love to talk about two people who definitely are not well known, if that's okay. So I first started the project thinking of like pop icons and musicians and celebrities, and I did do some of those. But then the first person who I did that wasn't a celebrity is a woman named Melissa Michener. And she is an incredible superwoman. She owns the Bark Shop in Harlem. It's a grooming, a small business grooming, and they do other pet services and daycare. And I met her because when I got my dog Elby, and that's like a long story, we rescued him, and he had like a lot of separation anxiety. And when I was going to work in the city, and when my boyfriend Jeremy wasn't able to watch him, we needed to bring him somewhere, and he was a puppy, and he had all these issues because he was from a hoarding situation. And I was so nervous, and I found this woman, and she was willing to work with me. She would open early for us sometimes just to take him in, and like they helped raise Elby. And the more I got to know her, she just did such amazing things for the community. Because I'm a teacher, and she is in the neighborhood where I teach. She would do drives every August, September to collect school supplies for students that couldn't afford them. She was also like starting to get very involved in like the LGBTQ community, being an advocate. And then after George Floyd's death, when there just was like an uprising of awareness, like more so than ever before, she became even more vocal on the Instagram. So she has an Instagram for her for the Bark Shop, which is amazing grooming service. I would definitely, not selling it, but I would definitely recommend her. And there was one, she had gone to a rally, I think the city, I think it was for George Floyd, and she came back, and she just had a lot of positive words to say. And that video was available through the QR code. And I was like, yeah, celebrities are great, but like, this woman's amazing. People should know about her. So I'm like, I'm going to do her. And then with that mindset, I feel like I would almost stalk people on Instagram, just like watching their content and like thinking if I wanted to draw someone, I had to be personally, truly moved by what they were doing. And another woman who's this incredible soul is, we call her Pranu, but Miss Kumar. I used to work with her. She taught third grade, fourth grade, pre-K, kindergarten. She's the most dedicated educator I've ever met in my life. Does incredible things with children, and she's huge on DEI and standing up for like the minority voice and empowering like 5-year-olds, letting them know that like, you know, like you're a Black boy and you are smart and you're going to do amazing things. And when she left teaching, I don't think she left it completely, but she had started her own company called, I don't want to say it wrong, but
Diversity with her in that, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
you know, it's on the website because I put it in my description, so I apologize. But yeah, it was like either diversity or diverse or consulting, and she would do like consulting for art educators and empowering women through like a DEI lens. And then most recently, her project, she lives in Florida, and she realized that there is no bookstore where she could take her daughter that was like a center that was like culturally focused that on equity and inclusion. And she's like, I'm gonna create this place. And she like set up a donation page, and she got a lot of support, and she has a storefront that she's opening soon, and she does read aloud, and she's empowering children of color. And just like her energy and what she gives to the community, like every time I watch something or listen to her speak, like I'm just so inspired. So those are two people I wanted to highlight, because I think there are so many people in our community that don't get noticed as much because they're not doing it for the glamour. They're doing it like because it's important to them. Mm-hmm. And like I wanted other people that might not come across them. Like I met Melissa because my dog needed a place to go, and I met Pranu because I worked at the same elementary school, so I was her kid's art teacher. And if it wasn't for those situations, I wouldn't know these women, and they're amazing. So like if even one more person could know about them and what they do, that's like, to me, that's excellent.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Stephanie, how about you?
So I love this question, and I was hoping, Sarah, that you'd talk about the two people you knew, the local people, because yeah, they need exposure too. It's so true. But I love this because I thought immediately about Lisa Hannigan, who's an Irish folk singer, who kind of like ebbs and flows on being like famous in America. But if you know her, really good music. So go ahead and check it out. But I love this, and I picked her immediately because ignorantly, I didn't know before I followed her on Instagram and Twitter, just to see all her music stuff, that abortion was illegal in Ireland up until 2018. And my fault, I didn't know that. That was ignorance on my part, but that's why I think, going back to why an artist's duty is so important to reflect the times, it's like you're looking up to these inspirational people, and they're informing you about stuff that you might not have known. Like, it's kind of like what you said, Grace. They're like, opening your eyes to experiences that other people are having, that you might not be. Yeah, I think it was March 2018 that finally it was repealed. There was a big movement, Repeal the Eighth. And she was a huge part of it, donating music, her time. It was all over social, she was putting it all over social media. And she was a part of like the group Together for Yes. So she was in it. She was donating her time to charity and playing music for it. And like I said, I think that's really cool. Like a double, like, follow her, because she's involved in all of these wonderful charities and stuff. And also, it's really cool that you could be inspired by someone who is reflecting the times, and they can teach you something you didn't already know.
Thank you, all of you. I want to just speak to our audience a little bit. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but if there are questions that you have for our artists or about this show, you can either hold those until a little later, or you can put them in the chat, but we do want to hear those from you, so please don't be shy, start to bring those forward. And while our audience is percolating a little bit, I want to shift from talking primarily kind of about the activist angle of the show to talking about the like craft, artistic angle of this show. And I think anybody who has had a chance to see it, either online or in the gallery, they'll notice that there are three very distinct styles at play here, right? And I would love to hear from each of you about how your style developed and what it was like to put it in practice for this particular theme, which some of you, you touched a little bit on this, but where did the style come from? I'm not a visual artist myself. I'm a dance maker primarily. And so the idea of like how visual artists even kind of like come into their style is just like fascinating for me to hear about. Stephanie, I wonder if you could start for us.
Yeah, of course. Definitely not a dancer, so props to you. But I mean, I've been working in this kind of style since I started, since high school, just like it was like definitely less honed when I was in high school. I was just throwing paint on canvas and trying to create some sort of an image. But I've always been interested in that mark making and like physicality of painting, to express either emotion of who I'm painting or what I'm painting. And I started off with figures. I started off with portraits, and the only person that you could ever get to pose for you is yourself. So I have like a million high school self-portraits that just, are sloppy and whatever they are. But yeah, it was always portraiture and evoking emotion through mark and features, like creating an emotion, like expression through mark making. And then, college changed me because I discovered color theory and everything changed. So, now the way it's like turned into what I do for what I'm doing for this show, I'm super strategic with like bright colors and like colors playing off each other, and colors to express the emotion I'm trying to convey in the painting. Bright and unrealistic when you look up close, but can kind of conceive an image from far away. And that's my thing.
Can you break down, there's a phrase you used a couple of times that I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about, which is this idea of mark making.
Yeah.
And like, what does that mean for those of us who maybe don't come from a visual art background?
Sorry, yeah, it's okay. I mean, just like confident marks rather than like a more realistic style or blending. I'll mix a color and I will put that color down and I won't touch it. And then I'll mix another color. Like rather than like doing blending work, creating gradients and things, I just kind of I like those chunky colors. I like just little blocks of chunky color all over, and drips and texture and meaty paint.
That's very hard to do. I
think what you do is hard to do.
I want to do stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm always I gotta blend it.
See, like I blend something too much, or like the colors are too close, and I'm just like, oh, some contrast needs to happen here. No, and I like destroy it, so I can't do it too.
Yeah, no, for sure. You see in a different way, and I feel like it's because
So
you
cool.
You grew up seeing it in a different way, maybe because I grew up in a very more of a strict and very traditional learning style, and so my I think I'm still discovering my style. I'm sorry. Oh, are you done?
Yeah, no, go. Yeah, no, I'm fine. We'll talk. It's a conversation.
I think I'm still developing my style, so I love seeing those confident mark makings when people have these like bright color contrasts in their artwork, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I put down a mark and it's not blended, I'm like, oh, I can't leave it like that. But I guess that's where our styles do differ.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of my style is more of like my traditional, just kind of like training. But also it's what I do love to do. I do love to have this sort of, image appear in front of me as if I'm like seeing a person and like an actual person in front of me too. So I think I enjoy that. But I think I'm still evolving too. I'm still trying to feel, I do landscapes, I do all these different things because I don't think I have anything down pat or anything. So it's
I think anyone does, just to say, I think we're all always evolving, like via art or anything, really.
Exactly.
I mean,
like in life, like this is just a part of our growth, right? So I think that's where my style is. I think it's still growing.
So Grace, I want to jump on that because your paintings seem to me, I mean, they quite realistic. And also we have these marks, which, my mom saw the show today. She noted that there's gold that's being used in all of these. And so we're kind of focusing on the more realistic aspects of your technique, but there's this choice to include a color that is not naturally appearing. I wonder if you could just talk to us a little bit about the use or meaning of gold in this body of work.
Gold represents royalty. It represents power, strength. And I think a lot of the people that I painted, people don't look at them that way. And I wanted them to glow. I wanted people to see these people as these are the people making a difference, not the people who are actually, donned out with gold all the time, or, the so-called rich, so it was important for me to highlight them in that way, just to, give them a little bit of that emphasis that they are the pure gold. And I just like gold leaf. It's very beautiful.
Very cool. Thank you.
It could be both.
Sarah, how about you? I know in your statement it says that this is, or it suggests that the digital illustration is maybe new for you.
Yes.
Have you always worked in this style, or talk to us about that?
Yeah. So I must say, Grace, you give me chills again. So I'm left speechless after both you ladies are talking. I'm like, oh, now I need to say something. Okay. But the digital is so interesting. I would say my true passion for art is in a similar vein and philosophy to Stephanie's. We would even joke in college about how our styles were so similar but different. And at one point I was painting textural narratives, but from people from the waist down, and she was painting from the waist up, and we're like, the marks are so similar, we could put them together and have our own show. And I was my favorite artist is Willem de Kooning, and I love the abstract expressionist, so mark making to me has always been really important. So digital art, I would say SMUSH Gallery is the first gallery to ever feature anything I made digital. So if this becomes a big deal for me, then that's noteworthy. But it really all came with the pandemic. So like I had more time at home. Also, I remember thinking a lot about the summer, and as someone being very anxious and not being able to go out and do these plans I had and being distracted. I'm a teacher, so I have off for like the 6 weeks during the summer. I was really nervous about like being at home with like my own mind all the time. And I've been trying to think of like projects that I always tabled or things like that. And I just got off of kind of digital remote learning digital unit. My school on March 13th, it was our last day in school. And then all the art teachers are trying to think like, how do we teach art through a computer screen? My school, we were very fortunate, they got a grant. They were able to provide every student with a Chromebook, which was amazing. So then I could confidently offer them digital art even more confidently than painting, because not every kid had crayons or paint or even pencils, but they had this tablet because the school gave it to them with a stylus. So I very quickly taught myself digital drawing through apps like Chrome Canvas and then Clecky.com. And my sister's an artist who's dabbled in digital art, and she told me about Procreate. She was like, oh, I've used this, you should try this. And I ordered an Apple Pencil with one of the stimulus checks. So I was like, I'm supporting the artist. I got an Apple Pencil. And what actually started this style was, for years, I've had like this idea for a story in my head, and I'm slowly in the process, might even be another 10 years, like working on a graphic novel with this story I have in my mind. And I was into that, and I was doing sketches for that, and I was teaching myself how to draw characters on the tablet, because that if you're going to do a whole graphic novel or a web comic, you have to be able to draw people real fast because you have to tell a whole story. So I'm working on this, and this is around the time that Stephanie reached out to me, and she was like, yeah, whatever you want, however you want to interpret it, whatever style you're doing. I love that. Digital art, if you want to do that, that's cool too, or painting. And I was like, huh. And then I've been drawing these characters. So I was like, what if I found someone I wanted to draw and I tried it out and did them in this like cartoon style that I'm teaching myself. And Karamo was the first one that I did. And I was like, I like this. And I still have the texture in there. Like I can't let go of that. If you look closely at all of them, you'll see there's digital texture. I had to bring that in. But that's kind of evolved since then. I feel like when I lay them in order, there's 6 of them. And if I lay them in order of when I made them, from summer of 2020 till now. I finished the last one maybe like a month before the show. And it's just interesting seeing like the evolution of the mark. So I am curious to see where I take this. Like, I don't even know. So Grace, you're talking about like, you don't know if you have your style. I sometimes think I know. And then I'm like, you don't know, because you're doing something completely different right now. But yeah, that's how I got into digital. It was really, I think if the pandemic didn't happen and I wasn't kind of pushed to have to teach my students digital art, I don't know if it's ever something I would have gotten into. Just 'cause I don't think I was confident enough to try it. I was like, oh, that's for other people that are really good, not me. And then I've gotten like a lot of positive feedback about them, and I've done some pet portraits and people really like that. I'm trying to put out a coloring book. So digital art has been fun for me to learn.
I understand what you're saying about the at first for me it was the same thing when I was like in this small apartment by myself for like the first couple of months self-quarantining. I started like I used to work really big, like huge paintings, huge oil paintings, and now I live here. And that would be a health hazard to do oil paintings. So I started doing like these like water-based paintings, and then just whatever I had around, because my supply was low. So that's how I actually started using mixed media. So like writing things in the paintings, and putting all little hidden like images and stuff, and using pen and like whiteout if I had it sometimes, like whatever, just playing on sometimes unrealistic color, more unrealistic than usual. So it's cool though. You're right. I do see like the difference between like your textures at the beginning and now. It's cool.
Yeah, but that's amazing that you talk about whiteout, because a big thing with my students has been use what you have, like draw on a cereal box inside out. And one of our teachers said something very philosophical about that being a sign of the times. Like they will look back and think about the time that they had to be ultra creative with their material choices and just like use what we had access to.
And speaking of mixed media, I'm going to kind of turn this, like we're talking white out versus all that stuff. But Sara, your drawings include in smaller versions a QR code, right? And so if we're talking mixed media, it's like also kind of a portal to another world, right? You click on the QR code, it takes you somewhere. Can you talk about how that came in, or why it was important to you to weave that into this body of work?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up, because that is such an important part of the work, and I feel like I would have forgotten to mention it. So I learned how to do QR codes again from school. Like, being an art teacher is so interesting. It really has affected my career. Learned how to use QR codes and this website to like record a student speaking about their art and then put the QR code next to their artwork. And then the main reason I was selecting these people is because I was watching them on Instagram and being inspired and like, yes, thank you. Yes. You know what? Like, this is somebody who should go in this body of work. And I wish I had like a good story, but one day I just like, I guess I was just sitting doing nothing, and it came into my mind. I was like, oh, QR codes. What if I linked that video? That would be interesting, right? And I was like, or would that be weird? Maybe I should put it in a speech bubble. And I was kind of just playing around with it, and I thought it was ridiculous. And I was like, no one's gonna think this is good. And I sent it to Stephanie and her sister, and they were like, this is amazing. I was like, oh, okay, maybe people will like it. And then it also was a little bit inspired and kind of gained momentum. Again, over the summer, there was so much advocacy for Black Lives Matter, and in school too, like my school is really totally transformed the way we talk about DEI. And it was around the time where everyone was posting the Black Square on Instagram. And then there was a week where I was reading like people wanted to amplify like melanated voices, and that was a hashtag that was trending. And I was like, yes, I love that idea. Like, I want to share the voices of other people. I want to promote what other people are saying, because I feel like it's best said by them. So that's kind of where it came from. And then the QR code, for now, they all link to videos on Instagram. But it was very exciting watching people scan the codes and then watching. And I also thought, like, you know, when you go to a gallery, so many people pay for like the headphones and the audio. It's like free. It's like the free version of that, you know, kind of along the lines of like Keith Haring. It's like, why are people giving you $10 to hear someone talk when you can just put the QR code and everyone has a phone and they can scan it and get it for free? So that kind of like just happened by accident. Maybe the universe just put the thought in my mind, and then things that were happening kind of kept the momentum rolling. But it's very important to me. I also don't just want to be like, oh, I'm an artist and look at this beautiful drawing I did of this person. To me, it's more about their message. So that to me is almost like more important than anything else. And it was actually talking to you, Katelyn, where the QR codes were a part of the original illustration. And I was going back and forth like, you know, what if they delete the video? That's not forever. I don't know. Does it take away from the dynamic? And it was talking with you that I got the idea for like these small mini prints that like could be mailed if someone wanted to mail them, or like transported or printed easily in multiple, which is like the point of getting the voice out. So I'm really happy with the direction that took.
Cool.
Yeah, there's this kind of undercurrent of democratization that I hear you talking about. Like, we don't need to create barriers. Instead, we can create access directly to the voices of the people. We can create small scale. And actually, all three of you have kind of transportable, you know, prints or smaller pieces of work in addition to the large ones, which I think speaks to exactly what you said just now, Sara, about getting the people out, you know, getting the message out in the world. I want to note for anybody who's like maybe sitting on their hands, I have a question, I'm not sure if I'm going to ask. We're going to wrap up in about 12 minutes. So if that's you, bring that question forward. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep going with mine. And, you know, the next thing I wanted to ask is like, I think it's very clear from hearing the three of you talk that you have each brought really a lot to this show. in terms of, the issues and the people that are important to you, and also all of, your craft and technique and all of this. But I also know, so I think this is actually turning into a little bit of a Stephanie question, because I know that while we have, SMUSH is hosting an artist's duty now, I think there's like a vision for this concept beyond. And so the question is, what are your hopes for this exhibition and for this body of work, either kind of as it exists now, but also, beyond June 12th?
Okay, I see what you're saying. So for this body of work, it's kind of like what Sara was saying. I kind of want to get a message across, because Nina Simone's interview was inspiring to me. I want other people to kind of open their eyes to it. Expressing yourself through art or music, which, like we said on the 5th, to make a point, to stand your ground, to use your platform for good. So it's more to make a point. It's more to express an artist's duty is to reflect the times than really anything else. Now for the future, my sister and I had this idea for an artist's duty to be this show. And it's true. It started with just me creating a body of work because I was like, wow, we have people like, John Lennon and Nina Simone and Joan Baez and all these people of the 60s who were standing their grounds in the civil rights movement and things like that. And then we also have Miley Cyrus, who created Happy Hippie and, is huge in the LGBTQ community. And we have, like I said, Lisa Hannigan, who's like a little bit newer, like all of these newer people who are stepping forward to be an advocate for what you should be an advocate for. And so that became the point of this show. And I didn't realize when we were creating the show that we were doing, I don't know, it didn't click until later on that that's what we're doing. It didn't click. I was like, oh, we're being that person, we're expressing, reflecting the times. So I want, moving forward, an artist's duty to, continue to hold these shows and maybe support different, not climate emergency fund, maybe support different movements and have different themes and continue to reflect the times and, kind of be like an artist's community where other artists can come in with us and share their ideas, show their work and stuff like that.
Thanks. We have a question from Rachel in the chat. Who are some of your favorite artists, art, music, etc., who are also reflecting the times?
You guys want to go first?
Leave it to Rachel to ask that.
No, that's a great question.
It's a great question. I love those questions that are like, ooh, I need like 10 minutes to think about this. Hold on.
I'll say
you go first.
I didn't include the painting in the show. I was talking to you guys about it. I painted the Head and the Heart of the band, the Head and the Heart. And they're, I mean, I'm not really sure. I'd have to look into it, what charities they're really donating to or anything, but they are hugely using their platform for good. Obviously when it was time to vote, they were all over the internet showing, vote blue. And so they're big on it, like to the point where they'll come back at people who tell them to shut up. I love that. Go on. Somebody else pull someone in. No, I'll think of it while we're going.
Yeah, that's my thing too, is I'm also terrible with names. So I don't like, whether it's the name of an organization or a person, I don't want to ever like misrepresent someone.
Yeah.
But Rachel, I'm glad you asked that question, because you just made me realize I'm not even thinking enough about that. And the fact that it's not easy for me to answer is like, I have to do my research and I should be looking at more artists that are also doing this. So thank you for planting that seed in my mind, because I'm now going to like make an effort. Like I know I could list all the abstract expressionists I love and etc. But thank you for asking. But one musician that I did do a portrait of that I found just very coincidentally, because they were I guess they assisted with like one song of a new album I was listening to, and I was like, who is this person? I click on their name, and it was Jason Butler, and he's been around for a while, and he's a member of Fever 333, and they have a strong following. But he's half white, half Black, and he just tells the struggle of like Black people in America, and like is very open and honest about like white supremacy and in his music and things such as that. So he's somebody who I've recently been listening to, and he has a quote in one of his songs that like I've mentioned in a DEI meeting before. It gives me chills, just about like how he grew up, and the quote is just, while you all, or I think it's like y'all, but while you all were learning violins. And I think about how even like I had friends and family that went to elementary school and learned how to play the violin. It's wonderful. He said, well, while y'all were learning violin, I was learning violence. And the point of being like violence as like survival, that's like how the community was. Even going back to what Grace was talking about earlier with choices, like these people don't want to be in this dynamic. They're trying to survive. That could be like a whole nother discussion that could take like an hour. So I'm going to pivot, but thank you, Rachel, for this question.
I have one more. I'm sorry, or two more, but I'll be really quick. So recently got into, I mean, you know, she's had music out for a really long time, and I've kind of liked her, but Janelle Monáe came out with an album in 2018, Dirty Computer, and like she's, you know, an amazing spokesperson, and just tells stories in her music of the experience of a Black person and people of color, as well as queer people in the industry. And it's just like, if you haven't, you listen to Dirty Computer, the entire album, because it's such a concept album about the Black experience, and it's eye-opening. It's so great. And also, real quick, Jane Fonda is awesome, because like I always think about her because specifically the charity that we're donating to is huge into aggressive action. Like they basically stand for what she says here. So I just want to read this real quick. Nothing has ever happened in this country, not the 8 hour day, not getting rid of child labor, not gaining civil rights. Nothing happened without massive numbers of people in the streets protesting and demanding. So change, like, you know, big change. That's what she's about. Also, she understands her privilege. So speaking to the glamour of it, like something about what you said before, Sarah, yeah, there's a certain glamour in it for some people. Some people it is all show, but for her, she openly said, yeah, I know I can pay my way out of bail. That's why I do it, because I can speak to this, and I can pay my way out because I'm a wealthy white woman, and that's it. So, okay, I'm done now.
Stephanie, I want to jump in here because you gave us a little segue to this. So we know that a portion of proceeds for all of the sale of our work is going to go to the Climate Emergency Fund, and everything from tonight is going to the Climate Emergency Fund. How did you decide? I mean, the world has more than enough things to choose from. How did you settle on this cause and this particular organization?
Well, at first, or after a while, actually, I was like, maybe we could split it 3 ways. Like whatever you buy from one artist will go to one organization. But I was like, that's not going to be organized. That's not a way to do it. I'm going to stick to what I said, because it obviously it came from a place of care and love. I mean, when we decided who I was going to donate to, who we were going to donate to, I believe it was like 2019, 2020. So that was when like the Australian wildfires were happening, like super harsh. And they've had, I think the year before that, they had their driest, like worst, hottest year. So I saw people in the media doing things about it. So I looked into what I can do. And I was like researching a bunch of places. And like I said, it speaks to me protesting. It speaks to me that like, you know, there are certain people now that say things like, you know, oh, if they weren't protesting or looting or whatever, it wouldn't be a thing. That would be okay, you know. And we've been protesting for forever, and that's something that I really like that they stand for. They give money so that people can effectively protest, like effectively do the job. So that's the Climate Emergency Fund, and I like what they stand for.
Awesome, thanks. We've got a question, not in the chat, but I think David, my dad, might want to ask a question to the group with his voice. There he is.
Well, hang on. Okay.
Where's she? Oh.
Okay, sorry about that. We have two computers going. And if I knew how to work Linda's, I would turn on the camera. I enjoyed seeing y'all's work today with Linda and with Kate in SMUSH. And I want to start by just applauding you as artists to do what you do, because, you know, it takes skill and courage and strength to keep doing it. And, you know, you're not often appreciated. So y'all, we really enjoyed your work. So my questions, if Kate, if we have time, I have one for each of the artists.
You hold it down.
Oh, I got to hold it down. Okay. So my first question, Grace, excuse me, is we saw the gold accent in all of your pieces, which were great, but Laverne Cox was different. The background, the accent was blue, and I wondered if that's because Laverne's hair was the reason, because it was so gold.
Oh, there's actually some gold in her hair. I wanted it to be pretty subtle because I didn't want it to like kind of overpower the her hair, because I feel like her hair is a very big statement that she makes. And so I didn't want the gold to overpower it, but there really is like a little bit of a sprinkling of gold in there.
I'm just trying to start the video.
Me too. I kind of lost the video too.
Okay. So yeah, I got that. And Sara, question for you is a little more complicated. Well, two parts. One, Peter Max, any chance one of your pieces has a woman who is jumping, and the colors and the hair was not as, it was a little bit wilder, I guess. And I wondered if Peter Max is anything that's hit your radar. It reminded me of a 1970s artist who did a lot of psychedelic stuff.
Yeah, I don't know much of Peter Max's work. I've maybe seen a sprinkling, but as soon as this call is over, I'm gonna look it up. That painting, not I guess digital painting that you're describing, is Pranu Kumar, and I don't want to comment on her background, so I don't want to get it wrong, which is the only reason I did it in the introduction. But yeah, thank you. No, I have not made that connection. So thank you for bringing it to my attention. But I would agree that portrait just has just a lot more like joy and expression. And I think when I think of this woman, I think that's what I think of. She's just so enthusiastic and full of energy, and that is her natural hair, and she is who she is, and she's not apologetic for it, kind of like Nina Simone. And yeah, I'm glad that came across and that stands out. I would want those images to stand out above the rest if I had to choose. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stick to my promise of one question for each. So I'll leave you with this, Sara, and you can explain it to Kate offline or something. I got to connect the dot with Kate's help on de Kooning. I mean, what I saw and what I know about de Kooning I need some help on that. So, because, you know, I just consider de Kooning to be primarily so abstract, and you are doing things that are so not abstract in this particular, you know, series. So
I feel like I can actually answer that in 10 seconds. I would agree with you. I wouldn't connect these portraits to de Kooning. He's like a love of mine. I think his mark comes through more my physical paintings, but I would 100% agree with you. I wouldn't connect those two. Or maybe
couldn't-
Stephanie looks like she disagrees.
I
but-
don't know. Yeah, I have an answer for this because I know your style. I mean, I think of those little flowers, all the marks that you have on one of your paintings, digital paintings with like the flowers, or the background for what is her name? Where she's jumping. We were just talking about her. Pranu?
Pranu, yeah.
Okay. So the background, all that texture, I don't know. I feel like it's like an interpretation, like done in a different way. I don't know if it's because I know your art, Sarah, or but I see the connection between the two. I see like how your oil paintings turned into this.
Sweetie, if I've run out of time, I can hold my question for Stephanie.
Why don't you hit us real quick with that?
Okay, Stephanie, you know, I'm a product of 60s and 70s rock, and you hit that pretty hard with a lot of your people, not all of them. And you explained, you know, what you were looking for in those artists. And a lot of them I'm very fond of. So this question's a bit different. There's a period in Picasso's career where the strokes are very similar. And he was highly skilled early. The broad, bold, any chance?
I mean, not particularly. We studied him in school and all that, but he was never a huge guy for me. Now he's going to be, so I appreciate that. I'm going to go take a look and make the connection. That's awesome. That's awesome. I guess so.
Thank you all for entertaining and answering my questions and for doing what you do. Sweetie,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thanks to all of our audience questions. Thanks to our artists for spending this evening with us talking about this show. I'm going to put in the chat one more time a link both to the show online and also to the donation link for this evening. If you are around either virtually or in person, come out on June 5th for our artist jam for an artist duty. And thank you just so much for being with us tonight. And artists, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts and creating and bringing this work forward for us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.